It's good to be with you guys tonight. If you have a Bible, you can turn to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12. John Thornton is probably not well known to many of you. He did not go to college. He had very humble beginnings, but he joined the family business in international trade. And by the time he was 30 years of age, he was the wealthiest businessman in all of England. Something happened, though, to John Thornton. John Thornton would come across an autobiography of John Newton. That book would impact his heart with the grace of God. Overwhelmed by his testimony of grace, John Thornton would contact John Newton, and the two would become friends. They would write together. John Newton would, as he would write hymns, would send them to John Thornton. They would pray together. They would confess sin together. They would do life together. John Thornton knew, though, that his role was different than John Newton. Thornton understood his talents, his treasure, his gifting was different. The time he had was different. He was not a preacher like John Newton. And what's interesting is the two of them in their friendship, you're more likely to know of John Newton than John Thornton. But the John Newton that you know, some of you may know, you only know because of John Thornton. The impact he had. John Thornton understood what was happening. Sadly, there was 97 churches and only 2 or 3 of them that actually preached the gospel. And who put them there was the wealthy of society. They placed the preachers where they wanted them. But what did John Thornton do? As he began to strategize what could be done, he decided, well, I can do that. I'll put 12 preachers in London, and I will support them. I will care for them. I will meet their needs. When I go on vacation, they'll come with me, and I'll invest in them, and I'll make sure that they preach the gospel. They continued, John Newton and John Thornton, to have this relationship. But one of the things that made it so special was John Newton's hymns to John Thornton were precious, and he encouraged him that you should really take your hymns and put them in a book. It should get out there. And so he did. And then John Thornton, with the gifts and talent that he had in business, bought 1,000 copies strategically so they would be reordered in the stores. So that the hymn that you know today as Amazing Grace could come into your ears. John Thornton is the man behind all that. Most of us don't know John Newton, but we do know Amazing Grace. That hymn. Now, why do I share this with you? Because tonight we're going to look at God's story of amazing grace. John Thornton lived a life in light of God's grace and the grave. It had an impact on him, just like it had an impact on the 3 ladies that you heard about in Matthew, but also are in Luke 8. The grace of God came into their ears through Jesus, and that gave them a gratitude for Jesus Christ and the gospel, the message he preached, and they supported his ministry because of the grace of God. Tonight, we're looking at the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. We're here to gaze at that. We're here to worship, to remember the grace of God demonstrated through his life, his death, his burial, and his resurrection. Good Friday is a time where we celebrate the fact that Christ went to the cross for us and he died. Easter Sunday is this Sunday that we celebrate that he is not still dead, but he has risen 3 days later as he promised. Tonight, I want us to gain some perspective, though, of the grave and of his grace. But before we go there, we need to look at Luke 12. Do you know what's at war with grace? It's greed. Greed is hostile. It's resistant to grace. And I want you to look at Luke 12:13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Now, Jesus has been talking about a great many things. He did not talk about anyone's 401k or anything to be invested in. But this man is concerned about his inheritance. That should tell us something. This man struggles with greed. "Tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." Do you know what covetousness is? Greed. Greed. There is much more to life, though, than what you have. This man wants his inheritance. He wants what's his. Jesus came for a different reason. Not to settle petty disputes like this one, but to seek and save the lost. And so what is Jesus going to do here? He's going to address this man's heart, his heart of greed. He's going to expose what's in his heart. Look at verse 16. He tells him a parable of the land of a rich man that produced plentifully. What happens when you have plenty? Verse 17. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops." And he said, "I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. I will store all my grain and my goods, and I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.'" This man is greedy. He's living the I life, the I-centered life. It's my life, and I'm going to live it my way. He's not centered on God. He only cares about number one. He has the mine, it's mine mentality here. We see it all over the page. It's my barn, my grains, my goods, my soul. What do the greedy do? They don't extend grace. They're not grateful for what's been given to them. He doesn't think about how he could give thanks to God. He doesn't think about the grace that's been given to him. He didn't make those crops. He didn't bring the rain. He didn't provide the water. God did. He doesn't think of being generous. He thinks only of himself. Notice what it says 4 times, what he'll do for himself. I will do this. I will tear down my barns. I will store all my grain and my goods. I will say to my soul, "Oh, I will do a lot for myself." Look at verse 20, though. The Creator interrupts this man's thinking and reminds him that he is part of his creation. He's reminded of the fact that all he has is on loan and it can be called up at any time. Time is a gift given. It is a grace gift given for a period of time. And then when it's up, all that you have is gone. Everybody goes back to zero at the end. You will feel zero at some point. Look at verse 20, though. God said to him, "Fool, this night your soul is required of you." Right? That's what the bank says. It's required of you to pay up. Your time is up. Pay what you owe. It's all mine. Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Friends, do you see how greed is hostile and resistant to grace? Man is sinful, full of greed. This is nothing new, though. Greed is fundamentally at war with God's grace. Just look at the Garden of Eden. Go to the beginning. Look at Genesis. We see what God did. Adam and Eve did what we do today. In the garden, they looked for something more than what they were given in the garden. The greatest gift in the garden was not the garden itself. The greatest gift in the garden was God was there. But they wanted more than God. They wanted to be like God. They got greedy. They loved something more than Him. They sinned, as we do when we want something more than God. More than what He has given, more than what He provided for them in the garden. He gave them everything but one tree. And they wanted that. They had Him, but they wanted more. Ultimately, their greed does what sin does. Sin causes separation from God. And all humanity is separated from God because man is sinful and greedy. But it's in Luke 12. Do you see what Jesus does? He is so gracious towards this greedy man. He doesn't dismiss him. He doesn't blow him off. He cares for this man's greatest need. And it's not his physical inheritance, but where his heart is with God. He cares about his greatest need. How can man be forgiven of their sins and their heart of greed? Greed highlights our need for God. Jesus came to earth to make a way, though, for greedy sinners to receive grace. And the context of all this is Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem to die, to pay the price for sin with his own flesh and blood, to lay his life down on the cross, to extend grace to the greedy. He's selfish, this greedy man, this rich man. He's self-centered. That's his plan for himself, though, what I will do for myself. That's his plan, what he will do for himself. Oh, friends, praise be to God that he had a different plan than to do something for himself. He doesn't go and do what I will do for myself, but no. He sacrificially, selflessly goes to the cross to extend grace. He doesn't just expose our greed, he does something about it. In Luke 22, fast forward to Luke 22, verse 42, we'll see what he will not do for himself, but he will do for us. He will do in perfect obedience to the Father. He will say, "Not my will, but yours be done." He will extend grace to the greedy. Jesus wasn't greedy, and that is the only reason why you and I can experience his grace. Because Jesus drank the cup, every last drop. He drank the cup of the wrath and the anger and the judgment of God that we deserved. Grace isn't greedy, but it's demonstrated through this sacrificial love. Not my will, but yours be done. And God's plan, as Hebrews 12 talks about, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. For the joy. God made a way for sinners to receive grace, but don't misunderstand Christ. Christ did this, yes, for the joy set before him, but this wasn't easy. This was agonizing. Luke 22, verse 43, we see, and there appeared to him an angel from heaven strengthening him. Why? It says, being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground. If God doesn't extend grace to greedy sinners like you and me, we cannot be saved. But in order for that to happen, he must drink the cup of the wrath of God and be separated from the Father whom he loves. Jesus alone can take our place and pay the price. After this, Jesus is betrayed. He's denied by Peter 3 times in the next chapter. He's mocked, he's beaten, he's blindfolded, as has already been read. And in the next chapter, 23, verse 14, notice something here. He's brought before Pilate. There's a bit of exchange between Pilate, Herod, and Pilate, going back and forth. Pilate, though, states very clearly in Verse 14, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. He's brought to Herod because he does not want to bring a charge against a man who's innocent. But Herod finds nothing. But to appease them, he says, I will therefore punish him and release him. Verse 18, though, we see the response of the people. They say, away with this man. Verse 21, they get even more angry. They say, crucify him. At this point, Pilate has a question to ask. He wants them to think for a moment. Why? Why? He asks the question, what evil has he done? He says again in verse 22, I have found in him, repeating this again, I have found in him no guilt deserving of death. He says, I will therefore punish and release him. They will have none of it. Verse 41 emphasizes what's been said throughout this section. The man has done nothing wrong. He's sinless. Jesus had done nothing wrong. It's emphasized again and again and again. And then verse 44. Luke has a condensed version of this. It says, it was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And while the sunlight failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two, then Jesus, calling out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having breathed his last. And then verse 47, and when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God, saying, certainly this man was innocent. Others in the gospel would say of the same centurion, would record that he would say, surely this man was the Son of God. But Luke emphasizes his innocence. He's innocent, and he's extending grace. He's innocent, and he's extending grace to the greedy. Here we see this man, a centurion. He has seen death after death after death, but he knows an innocent man when he sees one. Jesus was the perfect, sinless sacrifice, and he alone can extend grace. As a hymn says, grace that's greater than all our sin. Not some, all. So Luke tells a story about our greed, his grace, and the grave. Christ, innocent, that he went to the grave to extend grace to greedy sinners, demonstrating his power to conquer the consequence of our sin, which is death and separation from God. Grave conquered. That right there. Grave conquered is God's grace. He defeated death. Remember the why question of Pilate. Why? What evil has he done? The man's innocent. Friend, what about you and I? Are you innocent? Jesus has not committed one act of sin. In word, in deed, in attitude, everything he's done his whole life has been sinless perfection. Friend, what about you and I? Have you ever been greedy? Have you ever sought to satisfy your soul with something other than the gift of God? All of us are in need of the grace that comes through Jesus Christ. He is the one who conquered the grave and rose again. But Jesus, he did this to forgive sinners like you and I. Jesus had also a why question. He too had a why question. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Pilate asks the question, why? Because he's innocent. Jesus asks the question, why have you forsaken me? Friend, in order to answer this question, we have to go back to the beginning. Do you remember the greedy man that we talked about? I think you and I have more in common with him than we realize. The reality isn't that we've just been greedy once. We sin each and every day. And the reality is we aren't just filled with greed, we're filled with all kinds of sin. And the way that sin is demonstrated is resistance to grace. We want to serve ourselves and be our own gods. And it's for this reason that we deserve the wrath of God. It's for this reason that we deserve the punishment. It's for this reason that we deserve the agony. It's for this reason that we deserve to be separated. It's for this reason that it should have been us that said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And we wouldn't say that we're innocent, we would say we're guilty. It should have been us that said those words. They're more rightfully placed in our lips than in his. But Jesus experienced what you and I deserved so that we could experience what he's always had with the Father up to this point when he took on our sin, which was to enjoy the Father's love and to have a relationship with him. And that's why he went to the cross, to make a way for us to enjoy what he has enjoyed. That we might love and delight in the presence of our God. Friend, if you're here tonight, if this sounds new to your ears, if you've not personally thought about how what Jesus did on the cross impacts you, I would love to talk to you more about that. We would love to talk to you more about that tonight. Talk to the friend who brought you more about that tonight. Friend, if you're here though and you're in Christ, if you've repented of your sins and trusted in Jesus as your only means of salvation, then tonight's a night for you to rejoice. It's a great time to rejoice in the amazing grace that you've received. And for us to reflect on why tonight is called Good Friday. It is good because Christ went to the cross, that those of us who are guilty could be innocent through Jesus Christ, because he went to the grave, because he extended grace to the greedy like you and I. This is what we rejoice in. There has been a way made for us to enjoy a relationship with God, to enjoy his love and his presence.